something to consider is the concept of switching callers mid-tournament. The way for a team to beat a better team than them is to counter-strat them. We've seen this with Cloud9. We've seen Sean Garris just be this mastermind at analyzing teams, knowing exactly what they're doing, seeing if they're going to fit the script or not, and then trying to counter-strat them. And doing so really well, actually. And we've also seen him sort of swing and miss, where he came up with a game plan to counter-strat a team did something completely different, and his response was basically just like, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm out of ideas. Like, I do not know what to do. So a lot of times in tournaments, what will happen is a team will they'll play a best of 3, and because of the stage, like the group stages or how the tournaments functioned, the team that they're set to play, if they win this match, is sitting there watching how they're playing those maps. And then they go play a different team on the exact same maps they just played, and they get counter-shadowed pretty badly, pretty roughly. And one thing that I've seen out of teams that have a versatility in who can call is that this is like the ultimate anti-strat to anti-stratting, is to just switch your callers up. So even if you didn't follow a script as an IGL or as like somebody who calls like, okay, first gun round, we're doing this. Pistol round, we're doing this. Then we will do this. Like we have this strat and this strat. Generally as a caller, you're still more or less going to react. You still have the same philosophy and the same ideology and the same taste to your calling style, that even if you don't follow the script of how you call, what strats you actually call, you will be following the mood of how you like to call. Like if you're calling force buys, certain rounds, if you're calling the mood of how you're calling the game between rounds like 3 and rounds, let's say 15 and a half T side or even CT side, are going to be the same in the sense of how you like, what you like to put pressure on. If you like to take mid control, mid game, if you like to switch back to sights, how frequently you switch between mid control and sight control, as far as the attention that you give to your team, CT side, T side, if you guys are, running looser the first few rounds, and then maybe later on in a very crucial gun round where one team or the other team's economy is going to break, then you have this strat that you kind of whip out of your pocket. Or if you wait for that kind of an opportunity to do something completely different. So every single caller has his own style and his own taste, and if you watch enough of his matches on enough of maps, you'll get an idea of what a team likes to do and how they like to play, to the point where you know what they're going to do before they even do it, usually. And a great way, I think, of having that not happen is something that we actually saw Fnatic do in this last tournament, which is just switching callers midstream. So you switch callers midstream, and now teams can't counter-strat you because you have a brand new caller. Maybe if they did want to counter-strat you guys, they even feel less confident in doing that, so they just play their own game, and you guys can just play your own game. Well, the problem with that is, as we saw with Fnatic, sometimes it's really difficult to take one of your best players, especially, I think, after Happy had so much success lurking and calling. We saw a little bit of a calling revolution in the meta, where Get Right started calling, he's a lurker, Snack started calling and lurking, and it was like the new popular phrase, like, phase. Happy found success doing it, and, Envious, or LDLC at the time, won a major. Let's all just start calling and lurking. Maybe we should start calling from the lurk role. And that's another thing that I want to stress is people look at like, oh, he's the IGL. And it's like IGL and op are two things that people do that you can really do from any role. You have your support oppers, you have your entry fragging type oppers like JW, you have your playmaker type oppers that want people, want to be kind of more mid-round and just are more or less just trade fragging with an op, like Kenny, like Guardian, even though these guys can also play very aggressively. So you can play very differently with an op, and in the same way, you can call and you can also entry frag, like Angel, like Daze did this for a little bit, but he was very methodical with it. So Steel started taking over with the anti-frag roles. You could do this from a lurking role. You can opt and support, or you can call and support. Sorry, you could be IGL who's playing as a support player, or even an opper like Kerrigan. Kerrigan ops and he calls, or Adren on Team Liquid. But I think what they found is some people are just really good and have a lot of experience calling and also playing. And it does, I think, take experience. It takes a lot out of you. I think it takes a lot of focus in the micro game. So when we're talking about micro game, we're talking about what's happening in your general vicinity, how you're going to get the frag, how you're going to impact the game just here. If you're in long doors, all you're thinking about is long doors, somebody coming up cat, maybe somebody doing this or somebody doing that. And when you start calling, you start to think about, you take on the whole macro game, everything that's going on in the entire game, and what happened last round, and what's happening in the round before it, and what's going on in B tunnels, and what's going on in cat, and how they're rotating here, and how they're rotating there, and what you guys should do as a team, and how you should move forward. Which is helpful, actually. It'd be helpful if every team member could think that way in terms of the macro game, and then they could all act together accordingly after talking to each other about what they want to do or how they want to do things. And I think teams that sit down and just spend like an hour of practice time talking about ideology and talking about, or even arguing, discussing controversial things about, what's best to do. Should we force buy around weapons? Should we, if this person's doing this, should we be doing that? If they're taking this control, what should our response be? Well, maybe our response. And when you talk about these things, it becomes a lot easier once you're in game to just seamlessly understand what you guys expect out of each other and what you guys just resolved that you would do, really, and go from there and be on the same page. But beyond that, I think actually it's detrimental for a team to switch callers mid-tournament. But it is good if you don't want a team to counter-strat you. And I was thinking, actually, it would be really cool if Fnatic, for instance, was like played with Pronax as their in-game leader for like the beginning of a tournament, and a best of 3 or something, and then their next match was against, like, let's say Cloud9, and they have Sean Garris, who's a notorious anti-stratting genius, right? And they're like, oh, Flusha is going to be calling this next match, and they put Flusha in the middle. But instead, they have Pronax calling, even though they came out saying, like, yeah, Flusha's going to call and whatnot. And then it's just kind of like a secret they share, and people are like, oh, Flusha did a great job calling and everything. Flusha did a good job being IGL. But in reality, that was just a lie just to keep the opposite team on their toes that, it might not be what they expect for who's calling or not. So, because people are it's starting to become like who's pitching or something like that. It's starting to become a big hubbub in the media about who's calling before a match even starts, which is good, I think. And I think teams can use that use the information that's put on them, or the attention that's put on them, to misdirect and misinform their enemies and their opponents.